Does your idea of Ironman run training involve a long run the day after a long ride each weekend? Because if so, I think you could be making a big mistake. In this video, I'll be explaining what I think is a better way to approach a long run and answering other questions about how to improve your Ironman run. I'm Coach Rob Wilby from Team Oxygen Addict. Let's get to it. Okay, so question one. Why should I do my long run on a weekday rather than at the weekend? So this is a really common question from my athletes that I coach, because what I do is I structure them to have their long run on a weekday, usually a Thursday, ahead of them doing their long ride at the weekend, usually on a Sunday. So we separate out the long run from the long ride. The reason that we do that is the biggest risk to your run performance on Ironman race day is not having had consistent training in the build-up. That's the best way to build fitness. And the biggest barrier to building consistent run fitness is picking up a run niggle or an injury and having to miss training. And the way that most often happens is doing really strenuous run sessions, either really hard, really fast, or really long, when you're already really fatigued. For the majority of an Ironman build, that would be 16 to 20 weeks. I'm going to separate out that long run from the long ride so that we're going to do the long run with relatively fresh legs to minimize that risk of developing a niggle or an injury, and meaning we do that run when we're at our freshest, so we've got our best chance of building good run fitness. We've then got a chance to recover after we've done that long run, and then we're fresh again to do the long bike ride. Now, it's hard sometimes to find the time to do that long run on a weekday, especially if you're working long hours. So if you do have to do both of them at the weekend, do the long run the day before the long ride rather than the day after the long ride. There will be a couple of specific instances where we'll do the long run the day after the long ride, but you want to be running on the freshest legs that you can in order to minimize that risk of injury. And that's the best way, being really consistent in your running to improve your Ironman run so that you can have the best performance on race day. Okay, just really quickly, if you're thinking about your first Ironman, our Ironman Accelerator program gives you the structure, the support, and the expert coaching you need to get to the start line confident and ready. You can watch our free coaching webinar. The link's in the description. Okay, question two. How do I know if I'm running too fast or too slow in my sessions? Right, so there's a real temptation here to just run on feel, but I'd encourage you not to do that. Let's base your running on science. Let's base it on your recent run test results. And then let's have specific paces for specific sessions built around those paces. So I'm going to advise everybody to go over, if you don't know this character already, Google Jack Daniels and his book, Jack Daniels' Run Formula. Renowned physiologist, studied hundreds and thousands of runners and found a way to essentially reverse map your VO2 max from recent run performances. And then he's got great tables that allow you to say, well, if I've run this time for 5K, I can run this time for 10K or this time for half marathon. But the thing that's really useful is you can then break this down into specific paces relative to each one of those run test results. So you can generate the correct run pace for your easy endurance pace runs, your specific M-pace tempo runs, which would be great if you're doing a 70.3. But for Ironman specifically, the most important pace is what he calls E-pace or endurance pace. If you can be accurate with what that pace zone is, you can then go out knowing that the runs that you're doing are at the right zone in order to develop the specific kind of fitness you're going to need for Ironman. So my advice again to athletes here is, if you are really well prepared on race day, a really good result is for you to run your Ironman marathon at the top end of Jack Daniels' E-pace zone. Now, a lot of people are going to look at that on paper and say, that doesn't look very fast. I'm really hoping I can run faster. But in 15 years of professional coaching of Ironman triathletes, I've not seen people run faster than the top end V pace for all but the very fastest top pro triathletes. For most people, I think if you can turn out the top end of E-pace, you've had a really, really good Ironman marathon. And it then becomes less about trying to run fast in training because you hope that's going to translate into a faster race on race day. And it becomes training at the intensity that is right for your physiology right now. And then when you do another run race or you see other signs that your run fitness has improved, you can change your zones based on that, but you're changing it based on science rather than hope. That's the key to this. Question number 3. What's the best way to structure brick sessions for Ironman? Okay, so first thing I'm going to say, the thing to remember here is that brick sessions are there primarily for your head more than your legs. Running off the bike the first time, either whether it's your first time trying it or the first time of the season, it's going to feel really hard. You're going to have that jelly legs type feeling. It's going to be quite difficult. And it's really common for your brain to say, there's just no way I'm ever going to be able to run a marathon off the bike with my legs feeling like this. But the good news is that feeling doesn't usually last for more than 5 to 10, 5 minutes, I would say maximum. And after those 5 minutes are passed, your legs will go back to feeling normal. And at that point, I think the purpose of the early brick runs in your training schedule are done. Your mind knows that eventually your legs will come back, they'll go back to feeling normal. And after that sort of 5 minutes are up, you can run for another 5 to 10 minutes. But really, you're not doing this for the sake of improving fitness. You're doing it so your mind gets to understand, I might feel terrible as soon as I get off the bike, but this will change, it'll get better, and it'll go back to running normally. So I'll structure usually brick runs starting about 8 weeks out from Ironman race day. We'll start with 3 or 4 of them being 15 minutes long, because again, it's not about changing your physiology, it's about changing the way you think about it. Then as we progress through our training schedule, we'll increase that run from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. Eventually, we'll extend it to 45 minutes for our longest run off the bike. We'll do that a couple of times in our race simulation weekends, and we'll then have you do a very specific run workout the next morning. So you end up doing basically a broken long run, but I won't have you run more than 45 minutes off the bike. Okay, next question. What's the best way to practice pacing for a long distance race? Okay, so you'll have already heard me talk about Jack Daniel's e-pace in the earlier answer. So I'm a big advocate of knowing how fast you're targeting the run on race day, and most importantly, not going too fast early doors in the Ironman marathon. But the key thing to this is I advocate all my athletes do their runs as a 9-minute run and a 1-minute walk. They'll do all the long runs as that. They'll do any run over 60 minutes as that. And they'll do that on Ironman race day. And so practicing the pacing of this in training is really crucial. Taking that 1-minute walk break every 10 minutes works like a reset for your muscles. If you can run an hour today as your longest run, you can run 2 hours as a 9-1 run walk. That's the effect of the 1-minute walk break. It's absolutely revolutionary for people when they try it the first time. But the key is you have to do it from the start of the run. You can't start 30 or 40 minutes in. For some reason, it just doesn't seem to work. So include that minute walk break. And what you'll find is that on Ironman race day, that minute walk break is really useful because you can then walk through the aid station. You can have a drink, you can have a gel, you can have some food. You won't crucially spill any of that all over your hands and face and arms and feet, and you can carry on through the race. If you've never done one before, that sounds like it won't be a big deal, but having sticky coke all over your hands for upwards of 3 hours can be really, really distracting. So I'll have all of my athletes do that on race day, and so we'll practice that in training. Okay, question 5. How do I build endurance in the run without risking overtraining? Okay, it's a great question. It's relatively simple for an athlete whose build goes to plan. It's not as simple for an athlete whose something gets in the way along the way. So firstly, for an athlete who everything goes to plan, we'll plan to build your long run by 15 minutes each week, and every 4th week, we'll step back and have a recovery week. So let's say your long run at the moment is an hour. We'll go 60 minutes, 75 minutes, 90 minutes, and step down and have a recovery week, probably at 45 minutes. And then we'll go back and we'll build again. So 1 hour 45, 2 hours, and so on. If you do that across roughly a 12 to 16 week build, you can safely build your long run to about 3 hours before Ironman race day. And that's about as long as I advocate athletes running, no matter how fast they are on race day. Now that's crucial because our faster athletes are going to be covering almost all of their Ironman marathon in the 3 hours. Our slower athletes may be ones who might be taking 4.5, 5, 6 hours in their Ironman marathon. It's tempting to say, well, shouldn't I be trying to run further than this in training to prepare for Ironman race day? But what we found is a run over 3 hours takes so long to recover from. It's counterproductive and it affects other training the following week. And remember, You're training as a triathlete here for the Ironman. You're not training as a runner, a biker, and a swimmer. So we don't want this to knock onto your bike sessions or into your swim sessions. So I advocate that being the longest run. If you are an athlete who's going to be out there for longer than 3.5 hours on race day, but what we'll do is, as well as having those runs, I'll advocate athletes going out for long hikes. They tend to be a really great way that you can get durability training, get used to being up on your feet for that long without the risk of injury that having a super long run in training will bring to you.